So hello everyone, I'm here again with our next episode, Career Stories. We are here with Advocate Satya Mohanty, and he has a vast experience and he's going to share a lot of knowledge and information with all of you that what are the benefits of becoming a lawyer, and he has got 15 years of experience in the field of corporate litigation. So a very warm welcome to
Thank you.
Advocate Satya Mohanty. I'm here to ask you a few questions which will be helpful to all our law, people who want to pursue law.
Okay.
So, could you please tell something about yourself to our audience?
So I passed out law in 2008. I did my integrated BA LLB course honors from MS Law College, and then MS Law College was under Utkal University. So I passed that out in 2008.
Okay.
I did lower court trial practice for a year, and in 2009 I went to do my masters from England. So I did my masters in commercial law from King's College London, which comes under University of London. And since came back in end of 2010, early 2011, I started practicing in Odisha, and I've been practicing since. So I think overall I completed 15 years of practice, and I primarily do corporate litigation, which means I represent companies and corporates and in their litigation, advise them, strategize with them, and appear for them in various litigations in various forums, which includes Odisha High Court, arbitration centers and various arbitration tribunals, National Law Tribunal, which is in Cuttack as well, which started in Cuttack in 2019. Then consumer forums, and debt recovery tribunals, and other forums where they need it.
Okay. So my first question is that we all hear about different things about our judiciary system. So I was very curious to know, and I think all our audience, they are also very curious to know, that when we talk about Indian judiciary system, that Tarikh pe Tarikh concept, which is always there in our minds, has it curtailed now for, the final judgment day, for the final verdict? Has it curtailed, or still a person has to go through a lot of trials and wait for the final judgment?
So, there is no there is no objective answer to it, but yes, if you are just generally asking if it has improved, then yes, it has improved since the time the Tarikh pe Tarikh we were exposed to it back in the 90s or 80s when Sunny Deol said it. From then till now, obviously things have improved because judicial infrastructure has improved. Number of courts have improved, number of judges have increased. But at the same time, you'll have to understand that we live in a country which has complex problems, right? And we all of us are trying to be better. I don't have the statistics, but I think even with those improved infrastructure, India will still be languishing in not so great state in terms of judges to the population ratio, which is one of the markers of how your judiciary performs, right? If you have 1 judges to 10 citizens, obviously the number of cases and the effectiveness of your judiciary and the speed at which justice is delivered will be far more or far quicker than if you have 1 judges to, let's say, 1,000 population. So that's a challenge which we do have, and it can't just get cured overnight. But yes, if you ask me the trend is definitely improving. So there is no question about it. So and for that I probably think that we need more and more promising people to come into judiciary, right?
Yeah, that's why we are here to encourage everyone to pursue law. My next question is that how the films that we watch and the courtroom drama that we watch, so how is it different from the real life courtroom?
So again, I think And I think, you know, as our movies and Bollywood has been you know, maturing, we have more and more movies which are showing the real picture of what happens in court. You know, I think back in the day, I remember, I think Gangajal was, at least for me, my idea is Gangajal was one of the first movies which showed how our lower judiciary is. Because before that, we used to see only one kind of, it didn't matter if they were showing high courts or lower courts or trial courts, they would to show only one kind of a set.
Right.
You know, but again, now you have a lot of mature and realistic films which are coming in, which are showing exactly how things are.
Right.
You know, how lower judiciary performs. You know, what are the infrastructural issues in lower courts. So yeah, I think you know, we are showing real things as well.
Okay.
But for example, I agree. I mean, for me personally, because I don't come from a legal background, one of the early shocks when I decided to do law was that I did not know that English is the language, official language in which you argue in high courts.
Okay.
You know, exactly as you said, movies में दिखाते थे हिंदी में बात कर रहे हैं, ये कर रहे हैं, वो कर रहे हैं. For me also, it was like, acha, so we have to argue in English when it comes to the high courts.
Okay.
So any high court that you go to, all over the country.
That I think it's a news for us, because we used to think that it always is, it's in local language or Hindi maybe.
No, it's actually correct. That's an interesting thing, because the lower courts where evidences are taken. When I mean evidences is when एक witness आते हैं, witness depose करते हैं, उनका statement देते हैं. In those situations in the trial courts, there are sometimes, because if X person has come to give a witness, give a statement, a witness has come and he does not know English.
Right.
So he will only give it in, you know, the local language.
Right.
So in lower courts, you do have the local, you know, language from here in Odisha, as in here in Odia. You go to Bengal, it will be Bengali. But all the high courts across the country, primarily it is English.
Right.
There are times when some of the documents coming from lower courts might be in their own colloquial language, but then those are translated, because in high courts some of the judges may not be from Odisha.
Okay.
For instance, currently in Odisha, Orissa High Court, we still call it Orissa, O-R-I-S-S-A. It's not Odisha High Court.
Okay.
Because every time you change a high court's name, a constitution has to be changed, amended.
Okay.
So that's why it's still Madras High Court.
Oh.
It's still Bombay High Court.
Okay.
It's not Mumbai High Court. It's not Chennai High Court.
Right.
Correct. It's still Calcutta High Court. It's not Kolkata High Court, because those are old presidency high court which were established during the British times.
Right.
And that's how it has been recorded.
Okay.
So even in Orissa High Court at the moment, you have the Chief Justice, who is not from Orissa. He's from Tripura.
Okay.
Right? You have another puny judge in Orissa who is not from here, he's from Bengal. So if Odia is the language, then they can't really operate.
True.
They can't really help in administration of justice. So in high courts is only English.
Right. Great. So, and what are the best institutes here in Odisha, or maybe outside across India?
So to pursue law, I think.
Pursue law, yes.
So I think currently after, so there is an integrated law course which has come in, right? Which came in, I believe, in '95 or something. And slight brief background of that integrated course is the Bar Council of India. They realized that, you know, the 3-year program was not creating enough good lawyers to come into the bar. When I mean bar, the High Court Bar Association or Supreme Court Bar Association. Because you have to also understand that advocates had a big role to play in the constitution of our country, in our country getting independence. You know, all the big names that you're talking about were all lawyers.
Right.
I mean, today's Gandhi Jayanti. I mean, Mahatma Gandhi was a lawyer, right? He practiced in South Africa, in India. Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru was a lawyer. Muhammad Ali Jinnah was a lawyer. You know, so I mean, obviously, Mr. Jinnah did not have a role to play in our country, but he had a role to play in how our country was shaped in history. So all of them were lawyers. So So there came a time in 1990s when Bar Council of India realized that the 3-year program which one used to do after graduation, right? So after 12th class you used to do graduation, either BA or BCom or BSc, and then you used to pursue LLB, which was a 3-year program. So they realized that that program was not creating enough good lawyers. The quality or the gentry of lawyers entering the legal profession was not really that great. So they came up with that idea that let's start a 5-year program, which came to be known as integrated law course. So that became a combination, saying either BA LLB, which I did, honors, or some colleges do also give BCom LLB. Some colleges also offer BBA LLB, right? So then they decided that, listen, after 12th class, if somebody is really interested to do law, he should decide in the class 12th itself that I want to do law. So then he would get into one of these courses. So instead of 3 years of bachelor's degree and 3 years of law, he will get an integrated course which can be completed in 5 years.
So that saves 1 year.
That saves 1 year.
So it's wonderful for class 12 student if they decide at an early age. It will be much better because they can save their 1 year. So that's much better.
Correct. Right? So now coming to good institutes, because that's what the question was. So in Odisha, obviously, Utkal University is the premier university that we have. An MS Law College, in fact, in some literature they say is one of the oldest law colleges of Asia. But obviously because of infrastructural problems and other problems, it has languished behind. So under Utkal University, if you want to do 5-year law, it's either University Law College in Bhubaneswar or MS Law College in Cuttack. But then a lot of private colleges have come up which are doing exceptionally well. The Kids Law School have come up. The SOA University do have a law college as well. I hear the Centurion University also has a law course. And apart from that, you have the National Law University Odisha, which they call it at NLUO, which is in Cuttack. So for that, I think now, because it was not there during my time, but now they have come up with something called CLAT, which is Common Law Aptitude Test. So after plus 2, the interested students have to prepare and give CLAT. And I think
so that's a general entrance exam, or they talk about law, or what is their entrance exam?
I'm told that the courses keeps on changing. Like for example, 3 years back there was only 3 papers. Now they have added some more papers. But the point is, there is a common entrance test. You give that test. I believe they have subjects like English. They have subjects like aptitude, they have subjects like general knowledge, logic, and so on and so forth. And it keeps on changing as a lot of entrance tests, the criteria keeps on changing. But after you give CLAT, depending on what kind of rank you get and marks you get, then all over India there are national law universities. As per my knowledge and subject to correction, I think only 2 national law universities are not under CLAT, which is one is Delhi and another is I think Meghalaya or Manipur. But otherwise most law
of them are
colleges are under CLAT. So depending on your scores in CLAT, I believe the 1 and 2 in the country have almost been the same every time since a long time. So first is obviously National Law University, Bangalore. And that was the first integrated course which happened under the BCI back in 1995. So they are always number 1. Number 2 is always Nalsar, which is in Hyderabad, same National Law University. And then there are various other law schools which keep on fighting to get, because as you know, ranking keeps on changing. There is NUJS in Kolkata, then there is Bhopal, there is Hidayatullah, then there is Gujarat, everywhere, And there are also private colleges, Jindal is there, there are Symbiosis in Pune, ILS in Pune. So there are various law colleges where you can, after you give CLAT, or some of them might have their own entrance tests.
Right.
So that's how you get into law after +2.
I can see so many books here around you. So you have to read a lot. I mean, every time you're sitting through them and you're just reading them, or just tell us, it's looking very interesting.
So first is, obviously you have to read a lot of books as a lawyer, simply because you have to keep being updated with the latest law, which the parliament enacts, or on a state subject which a state assembly enacts. That's number one. So to give you a brief background, there are few kinds of books. For example, the ones that you're seeing there are all called Bare Acts.
Okay.
Right? If you want, I can just pull out one from here, and I can show you one. So for example, these books are called, as you see, they in fact say Bare Act, right?
Right.
So for example, this is a Companies Act, exactly as the Parliament has enacted it, right? So everything inside is exactly as the Parliament has enacted it, right? So that's why we call it Bare Act.
Right.
So this is an example of Odisha. So exactly as Odisha Assembly has passed this act, you exactly get it. So it's also called a Bare Act.
Right.
For example, this is a real estate, Odisha Real Estate Regulatory and Development Rules. So exactly as Odisha Assembly has passed this rule, that's how they have printed it.
Okay.
Now you have got books like these, which are called textbooks, right? Which are, for example, the same Companies Act, which is a Bare Act here. Now here, the writer is not only telling you what the act is as per the Parliament, but is also giving, explanations about it.
Right.
So if somebody is not able to understand something in the bare form, then they get something like these books, like these ones of Companies Act, this is of arbitration, and so on and so forth.
Right.
Now, the third kind of books which you see here and here is, these are called reported judgments, right? So this one here is an All England Law Reporter, which reports all the judgments which have been passed in England.
Right.
Similarly, this is SCC, which is Supreme Court cases. So this prints all the major judgments which have been passed by our Honorable Supreme Court.
We can have a close-up here, I guess.
Yeah. So
this is the book, right? Okay.
So this is Supreme Court. So for example, this is Supreme Court cases, right? So where this is SCC, we call it. So for example, here, let me just think. So this is a case which the Honorable Supreme Court has decided, right? So this is a case between some Ashok Kumar versus Raj Gupta. This was decided by Honorable Supreme Court on 1st October 2021, right? So then there are, what is the subject which was decided, what was argued, what has been held.
Right.
So similarly, this is an OLR, which is Orissa Law Reviews, which reports judgment of the Honorable High Court. For example, this is one, which is a special LAO, which is Land Acquisition Officer Subarna Rekha versus Baisakhi Biruli, right? So this has been decided by Honorable Justice D. Das of the High Court of Odisha. Now, this is date of judgment. This was decided on 17th November 2021, right? So this is how the cases of high courts are.
Right.
So now these books you may not need it on a regular basis, but yes, you should read it to be abreast with what are the new laws, what are the new judgments that your courts have passed.
Right.
So why is that important is, I mean, I don't know if people really know that, because India is a common law, right? Which is what happened because we came from the British. So common law system has a thing which is called precedents, PRECEDENTS.
Yes.
Which is that whatever our Honorable Supreme Court decides, that also becomes the law.
Okay.
Apart from what your Parliament and your Assembly is
Right.
saying. So this is another form of law Correct?
So when you get similar kind of case, you can just go back to
Correct. So
the
it's
case and
also, so there's
consult
two
it,
reasons
right?
why we have to read this and keep abreast, because number one, if Supreme Court is saying something tomorrow, then that becomes the law.
Right,
In spite of your bare act saying something different.
right.
Correct? That's number one. Now, number two, we also always quote
Yes.
old laws. For example, a client comes in today, says, sir, I did a contract, this happened, that happened, now the person is not paying me money and so on and so forth. In a common law jurisdiction, we can say, okay, hold on a second, your case is already covered. Because in a similar case,
Right.
which happened a year back or 6 months back, this is what Honorable Supreme
So
Court
maybe
has
it jazz up the process of, giving the judgment, I guess.
in a way, yes. In a way, yes. Because all similar matters then
Right.
gets disposed of.
Right.
Correct. So another angle is, for example, in France. France does not follow common law.
Right.
They follow a civil law.
Okay.
So it does not matter for your example, it does not matter if your case and my case are similar. You can't go and say, sir, in Satya Mohanty's case this had happened and I am situated in a similar footing. So please give me the same order. They will not do that. They will say, no, hold on a second. We don't follow precedents. We will hear each case independently and decide independently, and they might decide differently as well. So that's the positive, and that's why you have so many books.
Great.
I don't want them to scare the children, but yes.
All right. So yeah, everybody would like to know that what are the challenges for a fresher, whoever will enter this field. What are the challenges what a fresher will be facing? Because if somebody doesn't have the background, let's say they don't have a particular background from a lawyer's field, so what will be the challenges that they would be facing? Then the salary or the maybe the revenue that they will be generating by practicing law. So we would like to know that.
So so I believe your question is about what happens if somebody enters practice, right? But before that, if somebody is interested, for example, once you pass out from integrated 5-year course, generally there are or may I say traditionally, there are 3-4 avenues which are open to those people, right? Number one is litigation or practice, which I am doing, right? Okay. So you get into the courts, you argue cases, you represent clients and you argue cases. So number one is practice. Number two is law firms, correct? Where you say, listen, I don't want to get into practice, but I would like to get into law firms, where law firms advise clients, right? So see, litigation happens when there is already, so people will come to me when the cases have already gone to courts, or when they are already deciding that this case will go to court, right? But there are a lot of things pre that, in which they also need a lot of lawyers. So for example, they would need a lot of lawyers in drafting, their agreements, their contracts, their conveyances, or they would need advices in how to go about it. For example, there are a lot of law firms in India which advises clients as to, you see all these, this startup has got that much money, that startup has got that much of funding. Who are advising it? Right. There are law firms who are advising it, right? As in, this is the structure how you should get it. This should be your structure of corporate structures, and so on and so forth. So number two is advising, advisory roles, right? Where there are law firms. Now number three is judicial services, and there you see, I would say that, judicial services have been kind of a game changer in the recent years, because of exactly how you started this interview with, that does it take time? So to curtail timings, to curtail or to increase the speed at which you have to, administer justice, you will need more judges, correct? And the lower judges. So judicial services is a very, very good option for people. I see a lot of young people, especially girls, ladies, they find judicial services to be very, very lucrative. And I'll quickly come to the reasons why. But then the fourth thing which they can also do is they get into companies. So a lot of companies now, including public companies and private sector companies, both PSUs, because law has become so important, compliances have become so important, most of those companies, they don't only have one law officer, they have a legal team.
Right.
In which they also have 5-6 people, because they want internally, they have their own internal teams who to advise them as to what are the structures, what we should do, simple drafting letters. So that's the fourth thing that they can do, is get jobs in PSUs as a law officer.
Right.
And fifth, as I was saying before this interview, is, law is such a general field, and I believe in the 5 year that you do law, you are not only learning about different acts and laws and statutes which any aware citizen should know, because see, it's very, you use it, we use this term very lightly, you should know your rights. How do you know your rights?
Right.
Acts only empower you to give your rights, right?
True. Right.
So an aware citizen should know their rights, right? We should also know our duties, right? So how do you know it? So an aware citizen should know its rights. But 5 years, see, generally a 5-year student, I believe, through different laws that is being taught to them, at the core of it, the law course for 5 years teaches a student to be analytical, to be logical, to how to interpret something,
right.
Get a sense of how courts are interpreting it. See, that's a very, I feel that's a very big power. That's actually a superpower, because even if after that you get into, let's say, you 3 of your friends, you start a company of your own,
right.
correct? You know how to manage it, because you know how law is. So you always know, how the corporate law was, or how the courts are interpreting it, which are the things where courts are negatively interpreting something.
Right.
Similarly, I see a lot of lawyers now, after law, they get into civil services. That gives you a great impetus to know about your constitution, about your laws. Right. So that way, these are the various options one can take.
Right.
Now, coming to remuneration, I believe that law firms will pay you the most.
Okay.
Correct.
What is the starting salary? Somebody has to
see,
quote?
it's very difficult, because the band is massive, because
Right.
even law firms who are doing very lucrative practice, for example, say even law firms, nowadays we hear a term called boutique law firms, right? Where, so boutique law firms, this service full service law firms. A full service law firm, for example, you might have heard the word Amarchand, or a Khaitan, and all of those, they are full service law firms. So if somebody comes to them, they have every kind of lawyers with them.
Okay.
Tax lawyers, corporate lawyers, litigating lawyers, everything. You come to them, they will give you a complete solution. Then there are boutique law firms. The boutique law firms are law firms, but they do only one kind of practice. For example, they would only do arbitrations.
Right.
A boutique law firm would only do competition law.
Right.
So the ambit of pay is very, very different from law firms to law firm. But for example, I was recently hearing that one of the law firms, which is a very big law firm, a tier 1 law firm in India, they have decided that our starting salary of a person joining, fresh person who is joining, would be around, I think, 14 lakhs or 16 lakhs per annum.
Okay.
Which is brilliant.
Yes.
But that's not the only indicator. Right? I'm also told, the flip side is, I'm told that the gestation period is, people get worn out very easily in law firms because of, the pressure or so on and so forth. But then again, I'm not saying it as a negative. People have to know exactly what they're getting into, right? So this is for law firms. Then I think if you get into in-house, corporate in-house as a legal officer, again, that's also varies from private to. So, but you may start somewhere between 30,000-40,000 a month, right? Then judicial services, I think Odisha Judicial Services, I believe now the starting salary is somewhere between 50,000-60,000, but then the perks are big. You get a house, you get a driver, you get a this and that, as happens in, and obviously the influence and the power and the stature which comes with being a judge, that's there. Now coming to practice, I must fairly say that pays the least. So profession or practice, among those all options, I feel and obviously that's why I'm practicing, stands on a different pedestal. But yes, it does not pay. Yes, long hours, um, tough remuneration is creating a big hurdle in young promising people after doing law joining this,
But
because
that
they
happens,
prefer.
I think, in most of the professions because everything takes time to get established.
Exactly.
So I guess everybody needs to keep patience because be it any profession, go to any sector, I guess you need to create that personal branding in the market and then automatically work starts coming in.
No, absolutely, and I admire it saying that, because we live in such a times where instant gratification is so works as drugs, right? So everybody wants instant gratification. Nobody
Right.
wants. We want fast food. We want
True.
fast cars. We want fast everything, right?
Right.
So I think slowly it's I think it's our responsibility and the responsibility of teachers as well to not to make sure that the value is still there in students,
Right.
that the age old thing doesn't matter which era you live in, how quick fast food era that you live in.
And Satya, to be honest, I started this career series just because of the reason why I'm interviewing people directly from the industry, because I want that the students should get a reality check also. They should not get the flowery picture of every sector, but at the same time, after listening to the experiences from the experts, they should have a reality check that where they need to put in efforts and how to go about the things. They should be having the real picture.
Absolutely. And I feel, see, I'm not saying people. That's exactly why I say law throws open a lot of avenues, empowers a person after law to choose any profession, and everybody has to make their own decisions. But as you said aptly, that the students have to also realize, and more so apart from students, even the parents have to realize,
Right.
correct, that as a doctor, it takes time to create a brand, as
Exactly.
you said. Tata was not created overnight.
Absolutely.
We
I
talk
know
about
few doctors also who are
Correct.
struggling right now.
Absolutely. And and even CS, CA, and all that.
Right.
And I, one of the things also they can understand is when they are coming into profession to practice, they will have to have a mindset of a startup culture.
Right.
You read about any startup culture which is happening now, how they struggle initially,
True.
how they do everything together, right? They don't have they can't hire people immediately.
Right.
So that's a thing that they have to understand, that it's a slow process. It takes time to create a brand, exactly as you rightly said.
We have, I think, 2 to 3 queries
Okay.
sent by our students. So you can hear them out and I think we can take it up one by one.
Sure.
Hello ma'am, this is Dure Shahwar Ahmed studying in 10th grade in Loyola School. I would like to know about the prospects of law as a profession and how to go about it. Thank you.
Hi Shivar, I saw your query. I believe we have already covered it. As I said, there are primarily 5-6 ways in which you can the prospects of law. Once you complete it, you can obviously get into practice, and represent people and go to the court. And number 2 is obviously you can join any law firms. 3 is you can join any companies as a law officer. A 4th is you can get into judicial services, right? And 5th is, as I said, after you do law, there are a lot of avenues that you can do. Law is a general subject, is not a specialized subject. So yes, I believe that's the 4-5 things that you can broadly do.
Okay.
Hello ma'am, this is Shabaz Ahmed of grade 12 of Loyola School. I would like to know what are the different types of lawyers and what do they do? Thank you.
Hi, so I think you asked that what are the different kind of lawyers and what do they do. See, I believe you're asking about practice. So there are various kinds of lawyers, right? It depends on what field do they specialize. Either they choose to specialize this field by doing some course on those subjects, or it so happens that over a period of years they have got experience of doing those matters. As I introduce myself as a corporate litigation, I specialize in it. So over a period of time, I have represented corporates, right? And I am doing litigation, and also I have done a course as a master's course. But then you will also have people doing various kinds of lawyers. You will have lawyers specializing in service law, you will have lawyers specializing in taxation, you will have lawyers specializing in constitutional matters,
Right.
you will have various kinds of lawyers, and it depends. For example, you decide to do arbitration, right? So you will have a specialization over a period of time doing only that kind of matters, and especially now there are a lot of fancy things which have come up. I met a young person who said that I am interested in doing sports law, so as in everything things have become on a very micro level as well,
Right.
earlier you used to have either a civil lawyer or a
So
criminal
do we have
lawyer.
a list for the same? Like,
No, not really. It depends. See, even law is evolving every time, right? Law is exactly as society is evolving, right?
Right.
So nowadays, with so many clubs and sports being so big, somebody has decided, sir, I'll only become a sports lawyer. So
Right.
what will he become? For example, he will become an agent, and he will only work with players and clubs, and do their things, and it's brilliant, right?
Right.
So what kind of in fact, if you tomorrow become and you find a niche, you will create a niche for yourself in that particular field,
Right.
which probably other people did not know. But traditionally, as I said, if you get into practice, पहले सिर्फ था criminal lawyer थे या civil lawyer थे.
Right.
अभी even civil lawyer has become so many, right? Land law, somebody is specializing only in revenue matters.
Right.
कि आपको अगर land में problem है तो आप उन्हीं के पास जाओ, ठीक है? So things are also becoming more specialized every day.
Right. So we'll take up our next query.
Hello ma'am, this is Dure Shahwar Ahmed studying in 10th grade in Loyola School. I would like to know about the prospects of law as a profession and how to go about it. Thank you.
Hi Ashika, so you have two queries as to what is the criteria to becoming a lawyer and how do you prepare for the entrance test. So the criteria, as I had already explained, after 12th you give an examination of CLAT, which is Common Law Aptitude Test, CLAT. You give that, depending on the score you get into colleges, right? So once you pass out from that college, then you will have to give another examination which is called AIBE, All India Bar Examination. Once you pass that, you will be so then you will be armed with your LLB degree, which is a BA LLB or any integrated course degree, and a certificate from Bar Council of India, which is your score from the AIBE.
Right.
Once you have those two, then you go to any bar council. Like in Odisha, we have Odisha Bar Council, which regulates and gives you the license to practice, right? So you get those two, your law examination certificate and your AIBE certificate. Then you go and apply for a license. Once a license has been given to you by any state bar council, you can do it in Odisha, you can do it in Delhi, anywhere.
Right.
Once you get that license, you will be entitled to practice, correct, in any high courts, even in Supreme Court. But there is another additional exam for becoming an advocate on record in Supreme Court, which is called the AOR exam, Advocate on Record, which only Honorable Supreme Court does it. So once you pass that examination, then you can also file cases in your name in the Supreme Court, because only an AOR is entitled to file cases in Supreme Court. So these is primarily the three examination. But CLAT to prepare, I believe there are a lot of institutes which have now started giving.
This is for the entry level, basically.
For the entry level, to get into any law colleges or law schools.
Right.
So I think a lot of institutes have started,
Yes.
giving courses for preparing for CLAT.
Yeah.
So that's where you can start.
Right. Fine. So thank you so much, Satya. It was wonderful talking to you, and I'm really happy that we got so much of information. I actually did not realize that what was the time, and we just went on and on.
Pleasure.
It was such a nice conversation. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.